Ashok ji, you start.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Three of Meher Baba's favorite couplets of Hafiz, a mystical Persian poet, befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without any question of why and what. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand him. I am slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. Hafiz. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Sar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thank you. So, Hafiz it is today, and we continue with the place of occultism. So, last time we did the first one, where it was an interesting walkthrough of various things. We started with how to detect occult experience, how to know if it's just a low-end occult experience or a high-end occult experience, astral journeys. We went to God Speaks, understood, read about astral journeys and the reference there. And then we now are in the part two, but we are midway through it. I'll just read the headings again so that we connect back, and maybe we just read through quickly the first two pages and then continue from where we stopped. So the topics that we are covering in the part two are, and part two is about master, by the way. Part two is relationship with the master in spiritual life, right? So people constantly interacting on inner spheres. If you remember, that's what we talked about. Value of darshan and sahavas, feet of the master, mental contact, special precautionary instructions, helpful contacts and association, disciple used as an instrument, master as a relay station, internal eye, Om point, reversing process of perception, siddhis, and furtherance of divine plan. So let's get to quickly reading till I'll tell you where we stopped last time. So we stopped before helpful contacts and associations, 189. So my suggestion is we still start from 186 quickly and just read through. Would that be fine? Okay,
Yes,
so
that
any
would be fine.
yeah, anybody wants to read, I can read as well. Anything is fine. Let me read. Part 2, relationship with the master in spiritual life. People constantly interacting on inner spheres. Those who have even a preliminary acquaintance with the structure and laws of the inner spheres of existence know that complete isolation of human beings is a figment of the imagination. Whether they desire it or not, all persons are constantly acting and interacting upon each other by their very existence, even when they do not establish any contact on the physical plane. There are no limits to the spreading of the influence of the individual. The magnetic influence of the subtle spheres knows no barriers of national frontiers or any other conventional limitations. Good thoughts, as well as evil thoughts, cheerful moods, as well as gloomy moods, noble and expansive feelings, as well as petty and narrow emotions, unselfish aspirations, as well as selfish ambitions. All these have a tendency to spread out and influence others, even when they are not expressed in words or deeds. The world of mental life is as much a unified system as the world of gross matter. The gross world, as a vehicle of spiritual life, has its own indubitable importance. but the links and connections existing between different persons can by no means be fully estimated if one merely considers the tangible transactions that take place in the gross world. Value of darshan and sahvas. For an aspirant to see a perfect master does not yield its full significance except in the context of all corresponding happenings of the inner planes of consciousness. The rishis or sages attach great importance to having the darshan, contact through sight, of perfect masters. For they are the source of the constant flow of love and light which emanates from them and makes an irresistible appeal to the inner feelings of the aspirant, even when he receives no verbal instructions from them. The effect of darshan is dependent upon the receptivity and response of the aspirant, whose reaction is determined by his own sanskaras and past connections. Often the aspirant is completely satisfied with the darshan of a master and he desires nothing further from him. To derive bliss and contentment from the mere darshan of the master is a great thing because it indicates that the aspirant has desirelessness and love, which are the two essentials of spiritual life. Having had the darshan of the beloved master, the aspirant naturally desires nothing except to have more of his darshan and is thus impelled by his inner spiritual urge to seek the sahvas, company of the master, as often as possible. Further, sahvas of the master implements and strengthens the purifying effect of darshan and also results in drawing the aspirant closer and closer to the master on the inner planes. Feet of the master. Like darshan, falling at the feet of a master also has special value of its own. The feet, which are physically the lowest part of the body, are the highest from the spiritual point of view. Physically, the feet go through everything, good and bad, beautiful and ugly, clean and dirty, yet they remain above everything. Spiritually, the feet of the masters are above everything in the universe, which is like dust to them. When people come to a perfect master and touch his feet with their hands, they lay the burden of their sanskaras on him. He collects the sanskaras from all over the universe, just as an ordinary person in walking collects dust on his feet. There is an ancient tradition that after the aspirant has the darshan of a master and falls at his feet, he washes the master's feet with milk and honey and places a coconut near them as his offering. Honey represents red, bad sanskaras. Milk represents white, good sanskaras. And the coconut represents the mind. Thus, this convention, which has become established in some areas in connection with greeting the masters, really symbolizes throwing the burden of all sanskaras on the master and surrendering the mind to him. Adoption of this inner attitude constitutes the most critical and important step that the aspirant must take in order to get initiated on the spiritual path. One second. Mental contact. Once the aspirant experiences the bliss of the darshan of a master, that sight gets carved on his mind. And even when he is unable to establish frequent personal contact, his mind turns to the master again and again in an effort to understand his significance. This process of establishing mental contact with the master is essentially different from merely imaginative revival of past incidents. In the ordinary play of imagination, the recall of past incidents is not necessarily animated by a definite purpose, whereas in establishing mental contact, there is a definite purpose. Owing to the directive power of purpose, imagination ceases to be a mere revolving of ideas and reaches out to the master and establishes contact with him. Such mental contact with the master is often as fruitful and effective as his physical darshan. The inward repetition of such mental contacts is like constructing a channel between master and aspirant, who becomes thereby the recipient of the grace, love, and light that are constantly flowing from the master, in spite of the apparent distance between them. Thus, the help of the master goes out not only to those who are in his physical presence, but also to others who establish mental contact with him. Special precautionary instructions. The master devotes careful attention to the individual needs of the disciple, and the first thing he does is to protect the disciple from influences that will divert his attention from the path or interfere with his progress. Often, the master requires the disciple to accept some kind of temporary isolation so that his mind is guarded against impacts that might impede his spiritual progress. Thus, some yogis, under instructions from their masters, prepare their own food and do not allow anyone to remain present at the time of eating it. The reason is to avoid impressions of evil from the glance of bad persons. A disciple is also likely to catch the impressions of another's lust, just as a clean cloth may be readily soiled by dirt. In the earlier stages, the aspirant must guard against any complications that might arise through association with others who are not on the path. But the master gives special instructions for the severance or avoidance of certain connections and contacts only when they are specifically indicated for a special case. In most cases, however, all that is necessary is secured merely by the constant company of the master, and no need arises to submit the disciple to actual isolation. Although the disciple may be outwardly in touch with the world, he remains mentally detached from it because of his inner connection with the master. So that's where we stopped last time. The next subheading is helpful contacts and associations. Just as the master may isolate a close disciple from undesirable contacts and connections, he may also actually encourage and bring about new and fresh contacts that he deems to be in the spiritual interest of the disciple. He has a consummate understanding of the sanskaras and karmic ties and their complications. Thus, he can consciously help people to enter into such associations as will allow and call forth important responses and activities and help the progress of all concerned along the line of least resistance or by the shortest possible route. He uses his knowledge of the past lives, sanskaras, and connections of people to help them economize their spiritual energy and use it for the best results. So, this group could be helpful contacts.
Yes, obviously.
Exactly. So, these are ways that we are coming together to use for common benefit, and the master has done that, and it's for us to recognize, right? Disciple used as an instrument. The unity and solidarity of the inner planes make it possible for the master to use his disciple as an instrument for his work, even when the disciple is unaware of serving this larger purpose of the master. This is possible because the disciple, through his love and understanding of the master, as well as his obedience and surrender, establishes a rapport with the master and comes to be in tune with him. Those who come into direct contact with the master receive his direct help, and those who are closely connected with his disciples receive the master's indirect help. Master as a relay station. The sharing of spiritual work is by no means one sided. Even the disciples who merely think of the Master or meditate upon him have the privilege of sharing the spiritual and universal work in which the Master might be engaged at that moment. As he is one with eternity, The master is beyond time and all limitations of time. As he is also interested in the spiritual upliftment of humanity, he assumes many of the limitations of time, and his work can be helped by the voluntary cooperation of his disciples. The master feeds upon the love of his disciples and utilizes the spiritual forces released by them for his universal work. In this way, the master is like the relay station that receives a song only in order to broadcast it to the world at large. To love the master is to love all, not merely symbolically, but actually. For what the master receives on the inner planes of consciousness, he spiritualizes and distributes. Thus, he not only strengthens the personal links that the disciples may have with him, but also gives them the privilege of sharing his divine work.
Kartik, can you read again from the master and a little bit slower, please?
This one, this last paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Disciple used as an instrument. Oh,
Oh,
you
okay, from
can.
here.
No, not that one. That's too far. We can do the sharing from the sharing.
From the sharing. Okay, let me go slow. The sharing of spiritual work is by no means one-sided. Even the disciples who merely think of the master or meditate upon him have the privilege of sharing the spiritual and universal work in which the master might be engaged at that moment. As he is one with eternity, the master is beyond time and all limitations of time. As he is also interested in the spiritual upliftment of humanity, he assumes many of the limitations of time, and his work can be helped by the voluntary cooperation of his disciples. The master feeds upon the love of his disciples and utilizes the spiritual forces released by them for his universal work. In this way, the master is like the relay station that receives a song only in order to broadcast it to the world at large. To love the master is to love all, not merely symbolically, but actually. For what the master receives on the inner planes of consciousness, he spiritualizes and distributes. Thus, he not only strengthens the personal links that the disciples may have with him, but also gives them the privilege of sharing his divine work. So, is there an example somebody can think of relaying? How does a master do this? From what we have read in the stories and any personal experiences that we may have had or we may have heard of, how does this relaying work? So what does
Uh,
he receive and distribute?
okay, Jay Baba.
Yeah.
See, one way that people get dreams. Okay, like my son had a dream where he was planning to further his career, and Mayor Baba came in and he was like touching his hair, or maybe giving him some message or blessing. I do not know, but so Baba has his own way of you know relaying, communicating, and reaching out to people, and each would have some personal experiences. If they want, they can share it on this
No,
room.
no, but specifically, I'm reading this. I mean, I'm asking for examples for this concept, the concept of master, who obviously we understand how master puts people together and works. I mean, gets them to work together, gets them to work to support his universal tasks, and so on. Because that's what the mandali was, probably what we are all doing right now, or some of us are doing, and uh, 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 could be something that's actually furthering a bigger cause, and we are not even aware of it, right? We're just going about our life, but maybe we are actually tools in his hand doing something. But
Okay.
my question is this relay concept, this concept of I can't think of an example, but I understand what's being said in this para. That's why I thought I'll ask. So what
Can
can
Kartik, can you I'm a little bit. What is relay station? What's the
yeah,
function of relay station, if you
I'll
don't mind?
explain that. I'll explain that. So
Thank you.
a relay station is a concept that's from the radio days, and this book was written then. So a relay station is nothing but there is a transmitter. Transmitter is the station that creates the signal and distributes it. Then, as the distance increases between the broadcaster, that is the transmitter, and radios, you need many people to actually relay that. So you have relay stations in between, which do nothing but take from the transmitter and with greater strength distribute it locally amongst themselves. A much relevant example to all of us is the cell broadcast stations that are all around us. Today, cell phone towers, cellular towers are doing the same thing, but they are doing it in a different way in the sense that they don't relay. Radio is the best example for relay. That is, some signal with a lot of strength is starting from one location, and you have multiple relay stations which merely take that strength, uh, use electrical energy to increase that strength and distribute it for a larger radius. I mean, it goes on like that, right? That's a relay
Oh,
station. So I'm trying to
okay.
think how that works in spirituality with a real world example.
I can
Uh,
share my insights and just. I think in this one, just roll it down a little bit, just the first line here. No, no, go up, please. I want to, the sharing of a spiritual. Because you're actually asking about master as relay station, particularly that particular. It appears to me that if it says here, Baba says, even the disciples who merely think of the master or meditate upon him have the privilege of sharing the spiritual and universal work in which the master might be engaged at that moment. That's the key. That's how the master functions as a relay station. It appears, uh, you know, functions as a relay station. So what does that mean? Earlier, Baba said, when you love the master, when you think of him constantly, when you love the master, there's a spiritual force from disciple released that master takes it and uses it toward his spiritual work. So basically, the work that they are sharing, uh, the disciple only loves the master and think of him, remember him, and the master takes receives that in inner planes. Right? We have no idea what the dynamic is. So those spiritual force that perhaps we send from the gross plane, Baba receives it in inner plane, and then from there he uses it toward some universal work that he's doing at that particular time. And the good thing is we're not even aware of it, and we should not really.
Yeah, we
We
should
should
not.
not, because if our ego man get involved in this, oh, I'm sharing the work with the master, it just deceives the whole purpose. Um, so that's how I see it, Kartik. When you love
I
him,
think,
you
yeah.
see that?
Yeah. So I see that. So I think even excessive intellectual exploration of this is our ego mind at play. I was just looking for an academic example, but I think I, just the fact that he uses our love for him and our spiritual energies or our contact with him to use it for a larger universal purpose in his own way, is good enough to know. That's all. You don't have to worry about that
Yeah.
beyond it.
There is no
Yeah.
academic, I don't think there is no academic implication on that. But you see, it's very interesting because it's a win-win situation in worldly sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Baba says, just remember me, constantly think of me, and so forth, so I'll be awake in your heart. There's a quote I read today. And then when I'm awake in your heart, I always remain awake, Baba says, in your heart, in you. So this win-win situation is as such that we think of him in order not to think of ourselves, Baba says. When he says, think of me, remember me, love me, is because he wants to diverse our attention from our
Brilliant.
own false self toward the light, toward the which is our ultimate destiny. So by that, we remember him and love him. And what does he do? At the same time, he takes it and uses it for his own work. That's why it's a win-win situation, I feel.
Beautiful. Ashok, you were trying to say something.
Yeah. Adding to what Mahmoud said, it is generally believed in the Baba fraternity that you just tell or you speak out Baba's name or Namasmaran. That means repetitively speaking about his name aloud or in your in your mind. Your task is to put the name in the anyone's ear. From the ear to the heart, Baba does his internal work and brings him to you. Is what I can add and then to what Mahu said. Mahu has
That's
really
correct. Yeah, I just wanted to add. Actually, even in the books which are not Baba books, I was reading a book called Power of Intention. It is scientifically proven. If the person is good, he is joyous, he is helpful, he's he's a good person. Those vibes travel, and generally one person affects 70 people around him, and the people around him cling to him like the bees which cling to the honey. And you may see in our corporate life, the way where we work and all that, there are people who are shunned in a sense. So in that sense, if you see, we are all relay stations. And if
Yeah.
we become good people, even if we are Baba lovers or non-Baba lovers, we are loving Raman Maharshi or Rama or Krishna, we get that potency of the signal that we transmit around us. The BTS, in the telecom industry, it is called BCS, base transmitting station. So all
Correct.
you see, these are all BTS actually, and which pumps up the signal, as you are rightly saying. So it is uh, just be good. That's very very simple thing. And if you are following Baba or not following Baba, good people will always spread cheer around them. Baba has said that's the best service that you can give to the humanities, to spread cheer. Put your hand in that message of service that Baba says. Even if you are consoling somebody, that's also a service. We have to become that kind of people actually, and this communication business will automatically happen without even ever knowing it actually. Yeah, Baba.
Yep. Thank you. By the way, I think I recognize the book that you're reading. Who's the author? Power of Intention?
I dare somebody. Let me. It is on my.
Wayne Dyer. Wayne
One
Dyer.
minute.
It's Dr.
One.
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Dr. Wayne Dyer has written quite a book, quite a
Yeah,
uh,
Wayne W. Dyer. So
yeah.
he is calling it a energy, which is God.
Correct.
So
Correct.
his messages are the book is basically whether you are a Christian or a Mohammedan or a Hindu or whatever Buddhist.
Yeah.
The way it is structured is to become good. And Jai
See,
Baba.
he and Deepak Chopra are. I mean, their gig is, pardon the
Yeah.
expression, Their
Yeah.
concept is around yeah, connecting to a super consciousness and
Yes.
connecting
Yes. Yes.
individual thoughts can, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
connect to a super
Yeah.
consciousness and so on. Yeah, that's the
Right.
thing.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Jai
All
Baba.
right, Jai Baba. So let's
I to add
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
that there
Please
is
add.
a book which I have which I have read and which is known as The Wisdom of the Ages. It's also by
Okay.
Dr. Daya, has written around many books, and they, it corroborates with what Baba has said, that all religions are only paths, and we should we should give a recognition in the sense that we should not shun any religion, but we should just respect everybody's religion, and he's lot of positive uh, thoughts with Dr. Vendaya.
Correct, correct. Yes, yes. See, corroboration is inescapable. Corroboration is perfect because in a mathematical sense, what Baba said is final, distilled, and the superset.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So everything that's there in every book, scientific, non-scientific, technical, non-technical, philosophical, religious, is somehow contained, confirmed, corroborated, included in what Baba has said. That's the beauty. That's the
Yes,
brilliance.
absolutely,
That's the
absolutely.
brilliance of what Baba has done, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Agreed.
Yes. Okay. Let's continue. Internal eye. In infinite ways, the Sadguru tries to draw the aspirant into his own being so that the aspirant may get disentangled from the mazes of the universe and come to desire God. This longing for God is present in the aspirant from the very beginning, but the master makes the primary longing more intense and articulate by opening the internal eye of the aspirant. When the internal eye is opened, God, who is the object of search and longing, is actually sighted. As the gaze of the soul is turned inward and fixed upon the supreme reality, the desire to establish union with it becomes more ardent than when the soul is groping for God through mere speculation or imagination. When the time is ripe, the master can open this internal eye in an instant. Om point. Ultimately, the aspirant has to realize that God is the only reality and that he is really one with God. This implies that he should not be overpowered by the spectacle of the multiverse. In fact, the whole universe is in the self and springs into existence from the tiny point in the biggest self, referred to as the Om point. But the biggest self, as the individualized soul, has become habituated to gathering experiences through one medium or another, and therefore it comes to experience the universe as a formidable rival other than itself. Those who have realized God constantly see the universe as springing from this Om point, which is in everyone. So this is something to think about. How's the Om point in everyone? Anyway, that's something that needs. See,
Yeah.
First, we need to know what on point is, right? We can
so
discuss what on point is, and then where does it reside? The question, and then how is it that it's reside in everyone, like that.
sure, 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 sure. So if you look at my understanding of Om point, my so from the whim, you start from the point of the whim, and again, this I'm talking beyond the individualized soul. It's the biggest self, like it's rightly said even in this paragraph. So the biggest self, from the point of the whim, um, asks the question, and in response is going through a process of discovery, exploration, Leela, which, thanks to the nature and the power and aspects of unlimited knowledge, power, and bliss, the triune nature of divinity, has unlimited, expansive, and infinite capacity to evolve, change, and take forms. And then all of that emanates from the Om point, which is actually nothing. So it starts from zero, nothing, and from that emanates the whole world, right? So that to me is the Om point. What I'm struggling with is how is that in everyone?
Karthik, if I may add, you see,
Yeah,
I think it's mentioned in somewhere that we all are, it is in page 1 of God Speaks. All souls are a part of the oversouls, something to that effect.
correct,
So
correct.
basically, what it means is that uh, think of Paramatma or Meher Baba as the ocean, and we are drops of the ocean. So I just read one quote of Baba, which is there on one of his calendars. Distance between a drop here and a drop there in the ocean makes no difference to each drop's relation to the ocean. Avatar Meher Baba. These are Baba's words.
Correct.
So,
Good.
so I hope that sort of brings context to what you're saying, or is it related? Uh, I just wanted to
No, no,
share this.
see, contextually and from a metaphysical standpoint, I don't question the fact that the individualized soul and the biggest self are in fact one, and so on, right? But the Om point, is there a multiplication, is there a multitudinal representation of the Om point, or is it just one? So
I,
that's
my whatever I've learned is that the Om point has to be just the universal uh, force or power or the uncaused cause. Of course, we are getting into a little bit of a philosophical discussion, but there is something known as the uncaused cause, which is the beginning of everything, and that in Hindi Hindu mythology or anywhere else relates to that origin. We could discuss it later, but this is what I
So is the origin in everyone, or is
Yeah.
the origin? Yeah, so that's what I'm struggling with. Okay.
yeah, the origin is
Okay.
in everyone because we
I
are a
can
part of the.
actually share something. Go ahead, Ashok, and then after you.
Yeah, just give me this one. So basically the origin is in everyone because we are a part of the
Whole.
universal uh, forces, soul, whatever. We are part of that.
Got
Ansh
it.
means it's a part. Ansh is a Hindi word, but it means part. So we are a drop in the ocean, and we come to the from the ocean, and we get back to the ocean. If you uh, take an analogy of the ocean as the origin or Baba's universe.
Okay. Mahu and then Mamaji.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I said, I mean, we'll do it in order. I think Mahu, you can go ahead and then Mamaji.
Yes. So, going to God Speaks, according to God Speaks and how Bobo actually explained things, is yeah. So I'm trying to say it in a simple way. So on point, we know where the on point is, which that first urge comes, and then God wants to know, who am I? Then after that, there is a finite point. There's a finite, infinite consciousness that Baba explains in infinite intelligence, finite infinite consciousness. And this finite infinite consciousness, if we talk about it within the scope of everything and nothing, Baba says in everything there's included also the nothing.
Yes.
Right? So this nothing acts as a shadow of everything, but it has to be originate from somewhere. Nothing has to be originated through this point, which eventually appears as the shadow of everything. Uh, and we think that's why it's shadow, but we think it's real. We look at the sky, we look at here, I look at this table, I'm sitting, I think they're real. But in Baba's language, it's actually nothing. But that nothing is within us, where it gets generated from on point. So as everything. But what we are aware of is nothing, which is the shadow, which we're trying to, with the help of Baba, to get to know everything. So we have to have something in there for this nothing and everything to be generated, and that's on point. We are like a replicate of God, like think of it, like a colon. Okay?
Microcosm.
So what's that?
Microcosm, right? So
oh yeah,
saying...
microcosm, yeah. So he, it's God, and then Paramatma, and then all this finite, unlimited consciousness is there, all the way from, I would think even it's on point is even in lower kingdom, more than human. But let's not just go there. Yeah, so we're all like a macrocosm of that, like you said, but we're not conscious of it. We're not conscious. Because why? Our eyes only sees the shadow, which shadow is a shadow of that everything. Maya is the shadow. So we only see Maya. Yeah, like that. It's all interconnected, but I don't know. I hope it makes sense what I said.
Kinda, sorta. Okay. Mamaji?
I feel the whole concept of home point is the who am I question in every soul. Every soul has that question, and if it can get the proper answer for that at the end, that is realization. So this whole process in every soul, so if you clearly understand, every soul is God. Only thing is, it is not a realized God. And this realization starts with the questioning of who am I? And the whole process of evolution, reincarnation, involution, everything goes on till the end we get the realization. So unless this question arises, who am I? In every soul, this question will not be answered. And this answer is in realization. So one
I'll stop you
point
there.
is the...
I'll stop you there and ask a question. I agree with your logic. Your logic is very sound, right? Each soul goes through the whole process. But I'll stop
Yes.
you there and ask you one question. When does the each soul happen? The each soul happens when the first home point happened.
Yes.
So then how
And
is it
this
happening
home
every time?
point, no. This whole home point, as you imagine, is a single point at the time of initial question, who
Correct.
am I? But that get multiplied in all the souls.
Okay, so it's
So each
also
soul should
in
have,
each journey.
yes, that's how I look at it. Otherwise, what is the meaning of realization for each soul? To go through the whole cycle and then go to the seventh plane and then get realization. If it is a single point in one and not in others, the diverse multiplication of the same, then this journey will not be understood properly. So each has this question and they explore and then find out at the end. That is the whole process of realization.
So that converges with another concept which I was struggling with, and in fact, your answer will fit there as well. The other struggle that I have is, where does my world end and where does your world begin? We are all on this in this together, right? Now, Baba says that every morning when I wake up, the world around me is created by me, right? The waking state, the world just is created. The illusory world comes to life. Now, but in that illusory world, there are other souls as well, smallest souls who are also having their own worlds, right? They wake up, they see their world. And there is constant A, interaction, B, overlap, right? So there's interaction between these souls and also overlap. So my world, my turf, the other person's stuff, so on and so forth, all of us on this call, so on and so forth. So I think that concept is also a struggle in my head. That is kind of explained by what you said now, which is, apart from the fact that there is the one Om point instance which creates the multiplicity of souls itself, because before that there was no multiplicity of souls, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah,
individualization
Karthik.
process. Yeah, yeah, Sanjay.
Yeah. Karthik, actually, I think we are complicating it too much. The world around us is given us as a play, this
Yeah.
drama that is around us, and then the world around us, the people around us, and the nature around us gives us the opportunity to explore ourselves and further in our journey. So, if you take this as a basic funda, then anything what others are doing is for your own spiritual journey. You get to know people. Just say, I got to know of you and you got to know of me. That was the purpose, which we are not aware. So like that, it is with everybody around you actually. And then
Okay.
just so be happy about it. Just don't worry about your journey or their journey. Just follow the right path, and everything happens of its own actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I take it as simple. I,
Correct.
why should we worrying about journeys?
Correct, correct. No, no, no. I think it's
Yeah.
just this specific point of the multiplicity of home points, which is what is referred here. Any other thoughts before we move ahead?
Yeah, Karthik, if I may, if you allow me,
Please,
I'll read
please,
six,
please, please.
7 lines from the God Speaks, page 1. You don't have to search for it. If you want to, you can search for it. It's
You
part
can just
1,
read it. Yeah, yeah.
state of consciousness. All souls,
All souls are one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Atmas, were, are, and will be in the Oversoul Paramatma. Souls, Atmas are all one. Exactly the point which uh, Sanjay has said in a very simple. Um, it's page
Yeah.
1
Yeah, yeah.
of
Go ahead. Keep reading. I'll
all souls
keep
are
it.
infinite and internal. They are formless. All souls are one. There is no difference in souls or in their being and existence as souls. There is difference in the consciousness of souls. There
Yeah.
is difference in the planes of consciousness of souls. There is difference in the experience of souls, and thus there is difference in the state of souls. So there can be a difference in the state of souls, but all are one. And there is a beautiful song which they played in the East West gathering. All are one. It's from
That's
the.
beautiful.
It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful bhajan, which very nicely choreographed and dance done by the this California group.
Sufi group.
Yeah, the Sufi group. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful song. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
so I think that drives. This is what I'm trying to communicate. I hope it makes sense to all.
I think the summary is what Sanjay ji said. Just don't break your head. Come on.
I mean, that's why Baba's message. Now, if you are happy with the happiness of others, if you are sorry for others, So that gives us break that shell and become oneness with others. So because
Yep.
all souls are one, we need to have that, cultivate that feeling of oneness with everybody around us, whether it is a watchman or a CEO of a company. You should have the same approach and empathy and compassion and love distributed equally all around you. It should not be focused person to person. Maybe I'm
Karthik,
not
I
very
think you
important
brought
detail.
up a very good question. In fact, I may go and read again on the own point and the formation of consciousness from there. We read it, then we forget, but yeah, it's
Yes.
something to ponder upon. Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
I don't
surely
have a
some.
clear answer.
Nor do I. Having said that, it's intellectual acrobatics at one level.
Yeah,
But then that's the nature of our mind. We love to create challenges and try to break those challenges, right? I mean, most of us are like, the human mind wants things to think about, right? But yeah, I mean, happy to discuss after you have read. I also want to read up on the references to Om Point in Infinite Intelligence. And also, I'm trying to think of a website that I read something very well written on Om Point, Baba website. So if I find something, I will put it on the group, and we can surely pick it up next week as well. Till then,
one thing to remember, if our thinking and like analyzing and to this, if it helps in expansion of our consciousness, and if it helps us in a better understanding of the divine knowledge, then it's helpful. Otherwise, why do we want to, like you said, it's like a gymnastic, up and down, like that.
yeah. No, it's finally only that. So if you ask Sanjay and Nomita, so we have a good balance in this group, okay? So if you ask Sanjay and Nomita, they're like, what the hell are you guys breaking your head on, right? It's sorted. Just love Baba.
Good job, Bill.
Right? And then we have the rest of us, indulging and squeezing our brains a little more. So it's yeah. And I think there's a reason why we are all together.
Yes.
Absolutely, Karthik. There are two paths: the Gyan mark, or the knowledge, and intellectual path, and there is the Bhakti mark, or devotion, and just the love path. And I think Baba's this advent is to spread the divine love. So I think we should
Yeah,
either
so
way.
there are argue. I mean, from a Vedantic or Gita standpoint, there are three, but Baba gives
Okay.
supremacy to the love path, right? The
Yes.
divine love path. So he says it's the easiest. It is the one that is the true nature of. I mean, that's the driving force even in the other two, right? So,
Yeah, because the path is that Baba promotes is karma yoga. We have others like Dhanyan yoga and Kali yoga. We have other kind
bhakti.
of path. Yeah, but the path of karma yoga and devotion is what Mir Baba is all about. Yeah.
No. I think it's love. So bhakti yoga is closer to love than karma yoga. Karma yoga is selfless service, which also Baba refers to, right? But then
Yeah,
Baba comes to
I thought you said.
selflessness. Yeah, he comes to selflessness from a point of love, from a point of, to use that famous analogy, to love your child just like how you would love every other soul in the world, right? So selflessness, as seen from the perspective of loving and identifying the unity in every other soul, he comes at it from there. Whereas in karma yoga, as you would see it in Gita, and maybe Mama can throw more light, it's more selfless service, which is physical and gross, and in the sense, I mean, physical and gross, or not resulting in an outcome that's personal. So doing service with an outcome that's for a larger cause. That's karma yoga. So it's
No,
just as, yeah,
no, if you take all these methods, one universal point is that equating yourself with the other.
correct.
That
Recognizing
aspect
that
is, yes, and that aspect is practical or practicable only if you have love.
love. Yeah, perfect.
That's why Baba says love is the primary thing, which will unite all the things. So that is the kernel basis of all these different paths.
Beautiful.
Each mental, say, trait. So they ultimately bring you to the point where you recognize that the other, what you see in front of you, is your own self. There is only one biggest self. So that can be achieved practically by love. That is what is the message from Baba as far as I am concerned.
Perfect. I vehemently agree with you.
But the question is,
Okay.
how do you love?
Yeah.
Hey, Baba, this is Kama.
Yes,
What is the
karma
process?
has come. Process is, say, the initial process is, say, it starts from family, it starts from the community, it starts from the, say, wider aspect, like that, you can go on. But trying to equate with the other one. So if the other one, in your opinion, has a deficiency, and you are capable of, say, creating that deficiency to be taken out, you can try to do that. That is karma, actually. And recognizing that deficiency is jnana. And putting it into force is actually the way you can do that is, even if you are materially can't do anything, at least have a sense of equation with the other soul. Sense of joy or sorrow or whatever is the emotional background, that you try to equate yourself with the other one. So in this process, everything becomes the same ultimately. That is how it is to be done, I think. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, but everybody knows, that we need to increase our love quotient and reduce our ego. So for me, what I've understood is we have two types. One is somebody who has a guru who guides them. And as Baba has said, in everything and nothing, you have not, it's not, love is just the beginning point. What about obedience and surrender to the master's messages, postulates? Like what you just said, because love is all about relationships with both the animate and the inanimate world during the waking state. So the point here is, love is a very unique process for each individual. If you have a
We are losing you.
but example right now. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? So, can you hear me?
Now we can.
It is breaking.
Now he's okay. I mean, come on, go.
We don't have a master to guide us physically, like people used to write Baba letters and all that. So the only fallback we have is basically what I have said, the seven awakenings. For me, what works is basically following the checklist on all these different postulates on my vision, how to love God, and seven realities, and so on. So, so this is what I feel that a lot of people struggle is. At least I struggled a lot to understand what is real love. Otherwise, you're just in the BBC, the blah blah club, talking about Baba and saying you got to do this, you got to do that. But ultimately, it comes down to us how we are able to implement Baba's what I call as love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice to his messages. Jai Baba.
There's a
Yes, yes.
comment I like to make about what Koma said. You see, Baba talks about this. In fact, there's a conversation between him and Erech, that Erech complains to Baba that obedience, about obedience, how difficult obedience is, how difficult it is to obey Baba. And he uses this phrase. He says, obeying Baba is very difficult because he wants you to stand up and sit down at the same time. That level of obeying and alertness, that's what Baba expects in terms of obedience. And then Baba in this conversation says that Erech loves me really, but as far as obedience, Baba uses this term. This is a terrible affair, Baba says. And so he says, just don't worry about the obedience, Baba says. Just remember me and forget everything else and just leave everything to me, Baba says. And that level of love that Baba talks about, it's not a relationship. It starts from the relationship. But that love that, for example, Mera had, that was ready to be merged into him, infinite consciousness, that's a real love. And we're not there. And checklist and this and that is good, but as long as our ego mind is there, we really cannot love him the way he should be loved.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's a gradual process.
Right, Mao. But if the love is not leading you to obedience, that means there is something lacking, because the will of the beloved is the will actually. You cease to have your own will and follow the will of the beloved. So the obedience, what Master says, the Hafiz sayings and all that, is the natural outcome when the love transcends to a level, The obedience, first it has to be forced obedience and then it has to get naturalized. That you don't, even if he says, in Discourses itself, there is this thing, no? That when he says, there is night and the pupil goes and finds the lantern, though it was a daylight. So that level of obedience ultimately is needed. And only through love we can get that. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, love is a prerequisite. Without that love for the master, because it brings some level of forgetfulness, then your ego mind doesn't get involved. Oh, don't say this, don't say that, like that. You just completely surrender to what says, and then, like a love of Kalan. But, it will come.
Exactly. I agree with what has been discussed, and it's basically real surrender or complete surrender to the will of the Almighty.
Jai Baba, what I want to say is that pure love is a gift of the perfect master. The way Mehra loves, she had to have the grace of Baba to love her like that. As simple as that. So initially, as we know from selfishness, you start with selfishness, then you go into selflessness, then you go transcend both and go into selfness. And in each stage, the grace of Baba is required. So initially, we have to cultivate that activity, which can be very mechanical. But if you're sincere and dedicated, if your intention is right, then definitely the cultivated activity can become natural and spontaneous. And once it becomes natural and spontaneous, then you have to just surrender to Baba and see whenever it happens. Because as Baba said, intense longing is for and intentions.
You're breaking up again.
What you're doing.
You'll come back. You'll come back.
Your intense longing was too longing.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. 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 him.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe he needs
I
to
think
log
there are no
out and log
clear-cut
back in.
defined boundaries to these steps. As the love grows, the surrenderance grows. The
Correct.
obedience grows. Obedience will
Yeah,
grow.
but
We have these
that,
variations in love. In the morning you may be very loving, and during the day you may be fighting with somebody. Uh, so this as the degree of love increases, the degree of obedience increases. It's not binary, or it doesn't have a very clear cut boundary.
yeah, yeah. Without that level of love, obviously you can't really obey him the way he should be. But I wanted to make a comment. He's absolutely right, Kama, that what he says, and Baba says it. It's in Lord Meher, Volume 4. That love, it's a gift of the master. It's not something to be earned. It's something, is a grace that bestow upon us. And he gives it to us when our consciousness completely ready to do that. And yes, he gave it to Mera, but Mera was completely ready. There wasn't anything left about her, whomever she was in past lives and incarnation. Like he did say she's a Radha to me, and I don't want to go there. But if Baba would give that to me, it's a waste. If he would have given it to other women, Mandeli even, perhaps wouldn't happen. It's only one. So it's a process, and it's hard to really even talk about it.
Yeah,
I think we have to
you
be
would get the gift
worthy of the
only when
grace.
you're
We
ready.
have
Yeah.
to be worthy. We have to be worthy of the grace. Having said that, I think we are worthy in some way. We may not be worthy 100%, but there is 0.1% worthiness. That's why Baba chose us to be his lovers. That itself is a small pint of grace that he has bestowed on us. So is I would like to look it like that. We should be feeling blessed that we have his grace.
Yeah,
Grace
we
of his
feel
grace of
blessed that we are
it may
in
not be as
touch with
perfect,
him,
but
but
it is
that
there,
grace
and it
hasn't
is our
come
job
yet.
to cultivate it and grow it.
Yes, yes. I think both of you are saying the right thing, Kama and Sanjay. I think the divine love state will come later. Right now, you're already on the path. Even that is a gift. Thank you, Baba. All of us could be claiming to that. Yes. Okay, so if that's fine, we can then continue. I know we spent quite some time discussing quite a few things, but I am sure it was worth everyone's time. So let's continue with uh, after Om point. The process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation, and the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Read that line again. The process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation, and the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Right? Beautiful line. So what it's saying is you go through this evolution journey. Evolution journey is parallelly followed by the process of perception, and the reversing of the process of perception, nothing but involution, without obliterating consciousness, that is, keeping this journey of involution in full consciousness, amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity, right? So the self, as the individualized soul, sees first through the mind. The self, as the individualized soul, sees first through the mind, then through the subtle eye, and lastly through the physical eye, but it is vaster than all it can perceive. The subtopic is reversing process of perception. The big oceans and the vast spaces of the sky are tiny as compared with the biggest self. In fact, all that it can perceive is finite, but the biggest self itself is infinite. When the individualized self, now biggest, retains full consciousness and yet sees nothing, it has crossed the universe of its own creation and has taken the first step to know itself as everything.
Yeah, that's the evolution.
Yes. Okay. So there is a process of perception and there is a process of reversing the process of perception. And the last line I'll read again. When the individualized self, big S, retains full consciousness and yet sees nothing, it has crossed the universe of its own creation and has taken the first step to know itself as big E everything. Right? So basically, when you, so should we take that to be seventh plane?
I think so.
When
No,
you
I think,
see,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so when you see nothing, but you see, but you're still in full consciousness, I would say it's seventh, but I'm confused because it says it has taken the first step.
Yeah.
So how is that the
So
first step?
it's a first step toward that, toward getting to know himself as everything, because it's already latent, is within all of us. I don't think it means the seventh plane. It
But
means.
But in the early planes, I don't see nothing when I am yet retaining full consciousness, because I still am perceiving. I carry sanskaric burden. I see through the gross eyes and so on and so forth. Right. So this is a bit confusing, this line. So how is it the first step if I have already reached full consciousness and see nothing though I'm seeing? Right. So that's something to think, research, maybe.
Yeah. One question
Yeah.
I have, just roll it up, please.
Yeah.
Somewhere, because I haven't been coming in actually regularly either, some places it uses, well, the editor is Don Stevens mostly on this part. So some places it's used individualized soul, and someplace it uses individualized self, capital. Does anybody know what is the difference? And for example, in this context, why is using individualized self?
Good question, but I have been assuming it's synonymously used or has the same meaning both places.
Or maybe this is typo, because it makes more sense, because if you read, I'm just going back to infinite intelligence, that capital self cannot be individualized. It always is.
Yes.
That's the ocean. That's the oneness, capital self. But yes,
Correct.
we are as a drop soul, as a drop of that
Smallest.
infinite ocean. Yeah, we are individualized soul. So maybe here needs to be soul rather than self. Okay.
I agree. And I think I've seen more often the smallest soul used with individualized. And that also is, as you rightly commented, the right way. I mean, the correct, it looks very correct from conceptual understanding.
Jay Baba,
No,
I think
no.
what I have read in what speaks is that the dropped soul, individualized self, when it starts during the whim, it is unconscious of itself. And then when it goes through the whole process of evolution, reincarnation, involution, and realization, after realization, that individuality of the drop soul is maintained in that state 2B level, in the infinite consciousness, the eternal avataric infinite consciousness state B. This individualized self, the drop soul, which was unconscious of itself, maintains its individuality, even though it is united with the oversoul or the overself. So what
No, we are not
Baba
talking
calls,
about that at all. We are not talking about that at all. That's a different topic, and I agree with you on that. Right? We have struggled with that topic earlier, but that's not what we are talking about. It's a very
we are
simple.
talking about the individualized small self, the ego
Yes,
personality self.
it's just semantics. It's semantics of use of self against soul. That's all we're talking here.
No, self,
If I
soul,
get
spirit
Mahu
is,
right.
I think self, soul, and spirit are one thing, just used in different
Exactly.
contexts.
Exactly. I agree. And that closes that. Yeah. Mamad, you were saying something.
No, the same thing as what Kama was trying to tell. Say,
Okay.
even at the end of realization, even at the end of
Yeah. That's
seventh
not what we are
plane,
discussing, though
yes,
we have
yes,
struggled and reached consensus on
yes,
that
yes, yes,
now.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, good. So let's continue.
So,
Siddhis.
so basically we know that every time we talk about the soul, nothing happens to the soul. The soul is like the white screen in a movie theater. So each one is like a walking movie theater, making his own movie. So the self, nothing happens except the consciousness of the drop soul. Whether you call it consciousness of the individual self, consciousness of the individual spirit, or consciousness of the drop soul. So the only thing that is going on out here is the consciousness that is going through all these experiences, and then it attains Maha Chaitanya, Nirvana, and then hopefully Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that it attains Satchitananda state. That's my understanding.
Okay, so let's continue. Siddhis. The entire process of withdrawing consciousness from the universe and becoming conscious of the biggest self is accompanied by an
Sorry,
increasing
Karthik,
control.
a little bit slower, a little bit slower.
Yeah,
please. Thank you.
sure. I realized the entire process of withdrawing consciousness from the universe and becoming conscious of the self, biggest self, is accompanied by an increasing control of all the vehicles of consciousness. Such control is made possible by the vivification and activation of unused centers of control, and the functioning of new centers brings in its train a number of hidden powers. These new powers are commonly known as siddhis, and they can come before the aspirant has become spiritually perfect. In fact, egotism can flourish through the acquisition of such powers. The aspirant may not only take delight in possessing them, but might actually use them for mundane purposes from which he has not necessarily freed himself. Beautiful para. So
Yeah.
it just talks about the siddhis coming in and misuse or use for lower purposes. Siddhis are therefore rightly regarded as obstacles to the attainment of realization. However, after God is realized, all these powers dwindle in their importance. The siddhis have their scope in the nothingness that is the universe, whereas the person who realizes God is permanently and immovably established in the supreme reality. Although the whole universe is like a zero to the God realized person, he may voluntarily assume responsibility for those souls who are enmeshed in the tangles of the universe. In that case, he can freely and legitimately make use of these powers for the spiritual good of others. That is good use of the siddhis.
Siddhis is a Sanskrit word, right? Yeah,
Correct.
it is, I think, Sanskrit. Yeah. I wonder why
Yes.
he's using these words.
Yeah. No, but it's in philosophy, it's frequently used. Furtherance of divine plan. There is nothing that does not admit of direct or indirect control by the masters of wisdom. Large social phenomena such as wars, revolutions, and epidemics, as well as cosmic phenomena such as earthquakes and floods, are equally amenable to their control and direction through the release of the forces of the exalted planes on which the masters are consciously stationed. The masters may
Wow, this
also
is heavy.
use,
This is
what's that? The masters may also use occult forces to effect cooperative and coordinated spiritual work. They frequently hold meetings and conferences on the higher inner planes for securing the advancement of humanity. The oversoul, big O, in all is only one, and it always functions as a unity. Those who have become conscious of this unity become fit to understand unlimited responsibility because they have shed the limitations of the human mind and have become so impersonal and universal in their interest. They are effective vehicles for the execution and furtherance of the divine plan on earth. So that's the second chapter. How are we on time? Second part of
Can you
occultism.
please read
Yeah.
again? I mean, some part of it at least. I thought this was quite heavy
Dense.
in phenomena. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just read the last paragraph. Actually, it's simple. It's just saying that the masters work together to further the divine plan. I will read again. There is nothing that does not admit of direct or indirect control by the masters of wisdom. Large social phenomena such as wars, revolutions, and epidemics, as well as cosmic phenomena such as earthquakes and floods, are equally amenable to their control and direction through the release of the forces of the exalted planes on which the masters are consciously stationed. So the masters
Pause
working in the
here, pause
multiple
here.
states.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the
No,
masters,
see,
I was
this
actually
one,
explaining. Yeah,
go ahead, please.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, finish, then I ask my question.
Yeah. So the masters who are already stationed in multiple levels of consciousness or planes of consciousness work in tandem and in cohesion towards furthering, and handling. So the word he uses is direct and influence. So they direct and influence all these things, which is social phenomenon as well as cosmic phenomena. And they have both direct and indirect control.
Yeah, when he says the exalted plane, that means the higher planes, like higher planes of consciousness.
Yes.
So it depends on where they're stationed at, but they work together over all
Correct.
this.
That's what is, yes. And then he goes on, the masters may also use occult forces to effect cooperative and coordinated spiritual work. They frequently hold meetings and conferences on the higher inner planes for securing the advance of humanity. And we know Baba used to also participate in those, as he has mentioned off and on in his universal work. The oversoul in all is only one, and it always functions as a unity. So across all these masters and across all these different people on different planes, there's still the same oversoul. Those who have become conscious of this
Karthik,
unity, yeah,
Karthik,
yes,
the
yeah.
sentence that you just read and the paragraph which follows tries to answer your initial question. So read that with that background. Okay.
Thank you. Sure. I will read again. The oversoul in all is only one, and it always functions as a unity. Those who have become conscious of this unity become fit to understand unlimited responsibility. Because they have shed the limitations of the human mind and have become so impersonal and universal in their interest, they are effective vehicles for the execution and furtherance of the divine plan on earth. You're referring to the Om point question that I had
Yes,
and
yes,
the multiplicity of that. Thank you.
yes.
But I'm still struggling.
Yes.
Yeah, we get it. But this is perfect masters. These are
Yes, these are masters. Yes, these are
these
more
are the
exalted
masters.
souls.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one more
Yes.
thing is occurred to me as when you read it the second time, is that all these calamities. Can you bring it up a little bit? Baba divides it into social, which is interesting. I didn't never thought about that. Social phenomena versus cosmic phenomena. So if the war is going on, which is right now is going on quite a bit, and a lot of people are very upset about it, even among Bible lovers and so forth, or when earthquake happens and flood, that this is all planned by the masters.
Exactly.
And it has to happen. Like Baba said, what has to happen will happen. So there is no reason for us to even get upset or worried or disheartened and all that, because it's all divine will. So this is a good reminder, actually, I think, for all of us.
In fact, that's what you should be
Uh,
telling the Baba lovers that are upset. When Baba was in his form, we had the most bloodiest world war, right? And
Exactly.
he himself said that it is part of his work, and he was managing it to the greatest detail, right? The Second World War, and
Yeah.
since around the time of since his advent, or more specifically his birth, there was another bloody war as well, the First World War, which ended in 19. But by the time Baba took control of the universe, it was the World War. So I mean, it's sad to see souls go through struggle and the world go through strife. But we have to recognize as Baba lovers that there is a bigger design at play. Yeah, Mamadi.
yeah, only factor that we need to understand is that it should not to give way to a sort of a defeated tendency in us. Everything is happening as per a plan. Don't bother about it. Don't do anything for that.
Fatalism.
Or
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
that should not happen. That's all. So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
best we
Fatalism
can
is a
do?
problem. Yes, yes.
Problem.
Jay
So
Baba,
in
I
philosophy, it's easy to slip into fatalism. Yeah, Kama.
Yes, sir.
yeah. So a couple of comments. When we were talking about siddhis, now I was looking at a person like Aurobindo, who Baba said came to the sixth plane on his own effort. And thankfully, whatever siddhis he gained, because for 25 years he was completely isolated. The mother was doing all the front end work in Aurobindo ashram. And so what comes to my mind is that Baba said one can go up to the sixth plane on one's own effort, but it's very, very rare for individuals to do that, number one. Number two is, if you are doing, different kinds of meditation practice, different kind of, occult practices, you can gain a lot of siddhis, and one can misuse it. If you're not directed by a perfect master, if one doesn't have a guru directing one on the spiritual path, then there's a tendency for the spiritual aspirant to start misusing the siddhis, and we know the condition, the state when you come to the fourth plane. So what comes to my mind is that, as Baba said, if you don't use your siddhis, like in the fourth plane, when you come to the fourth, don't use your siddhis, you go to the 5th plane and then you go to the 6th plane. But people who are in the 4th plane and actually use their power to help society, humanity, then they can go to the 6th plane. So
Yeah.
another thing is, of course, the best thing is not to have any siddhis, because there's always temptation. As Oscar Wilde said, I can resist everything but temptation. So the ego always wants you to, wants the mind ego to survive. Otherwise, creation can't exist. So the most important thing we can surrender or pray to Baba is not to have any siddhis, go veiled in the process, and hopefully get MOM, Moksha Ordinary Mukti. If not, as you talked about the divine plan. So this also comes to my mind that as Baba said in God Speaks or somewhere else, that every drop soul, their state of consciousness, what kind of mukti or liberation they will get, which we know there are 4 kinds: moksha, ordinary mukti, nirvana, nirvikalpa samadhi, and sahaja samadhi. So even these 4 states of consciousness are already what do you call, prescripted. So in a way, the only thing we can do is to be a good actor, an intelligent actor. Like what I say, intelligent action, and intelligent action implies being an intelligent actor, not reacting to your past conditioning of lust, greed, and anger, thereby dissolving samskaras and what we call as unwinding samskaras. So that is the only thing we can do in the 16 hours of our waking state, is to do that LOS, love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice to Baba's messages. In fact, I call the 80-20 rule, like 80% intelligent inaction and 20% intelligent action. And hopefully with financial security, you can just sit back like I'm, kind of be in a garden and do nothing, kind of stuff. So in a way, I think that one has to go through complexity in life, all these ups and downs in life. And then you have the grace of a perfect master who tells you what is the bigger framework. And we all know that, I was reading God in a Pill, where Baba says, we all know that once once you have taken a human form, you have full and complete consciousness. Initially, I thought you actually have super consciousness, but he calls it super consciousness. And in the subtle planes, he calls it super consciousness. And in the mental plane, he calls it super consciousness. And I was wondering why, but maybe because you're able to see God in the 5th and 6th plane. So he calls it super consciousness, but super consciousness is still covered by that thin layer of sanskara where you have the subject and object duality. And you need a perfect master to kind of take you from the 6th plane to the 7th plane, where the sanskaras become 0 and you attain nirvana or nirvikalpa samadhi, whatever your prescripted thing is. So I think the best thing we can do is only keep working on ourselves, being self-aware. And as Baba said, don't worry, be happy. But the only worry you have to worry is not remembering me all the time. And I try to, and he also given us a practical example that he says, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, think as if Baba is in front of you and how you will behave. So I'm still working on that. Jai Baba.
Good summary. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to your network, your network
Yes.
worked for
We
once for 2 minutes
we
without problem.
We were missing you for a long time.
Yeah.
Blame it on Baba. Sorry.
Baba accepts even blame.
That's
Okay.
yeah. Bye, Nehaji. I wanted to draw Nehaji and Ashish because then there's no comments from them. Anyway, if you have to leave, anyway, we are almost wrapping up.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Thanks.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba. We will wrap up on that note and continue from part 3 on the next Sunday.
Okay.